You can't teach your kids anything. You just have to embody the things that you want them to learn.
Our guest today, Sahil Bloom, who is the author of the new book, The 5 Types of Wealth.
My mental health, physical health, I was in a tough spot. While on the outside looking in, things were great. I was winning the game, if you will. And in that moment, we realized that we needed to make a change. Prioritize the things that we truly cared about, not what the world had told us we should care about. And the most beautiful part in all of this, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our son. It was a really tough journey. It was one of those moments in life where you feel like God winked at you. Sit and think about your purpose a little more.
What is one piece of advice that you would give? Yeah, so we start these with a rapid fire. So I'm going to ask you questions. We're looking for a brief answer. And then after that, we will roll into sort of the deeper themes of the book. First question. Tell us about your greatest ESPN highlight.
I gave up a grand slam on ESPN in 2012 in the Super Regionals of the College World Series at Florida State. And as I say online, I'm still waiting for that ball to land.
I love it. Tell us what you learned from your worst job ever.
I learned that putting your head down and working hard on things, even if you hate them, very rarely results in anything bad happening.
What is something you've changed your mind on recently?
You can't teach your kids anything. You just have to embody the things that you want them to learn.
What is your favorite tweet that you've ever written?
Never let the quest for more distract you from the beauty of enough.
Okay, pretend that you can see one band live. They can be living, they can be dead, it can be any time period of the band. Who would you choose?
I think I would choose the Goo Goo Dolls.
At any certain era?
Like Goo Goo Dolls peak, like Iris, Name, Stay With You. Some of those songs were just like the anthems of my wife and my early dating years in high school. And they just bring back so many memories for both of us.
Amazing. So that leads to the second rapid fire. You married your high school sweetheart.
I did. Yeah, we met when she was 14, I was 15.
Oh man, this is amazing. All right, let's get into the book, which is what we're here to talk about. I'm super psyched for this thing to get out in the world. I've read it; it's great. I wanted to get into, first of all, what prompted this book. So from my reading, it seemed like what really sort of set you on the course to writing and researching this book was a conversation you had with a friend where he starts asking you about your parents and asking you how often you see them. And then he starts running this math about the realities of how often you will see them. So tell us a little bit about that.
It was very much a single conversation that changed the course of my life. I was out for a drink with an old friend. This is in May of 2021. And we sat down and he asked how I was doing. And I told him that it had started to get difficult being as far away from my parents as I was. I had a job. We were living in California, 3,000 miles away from my parents who are on the East Coast. And they're getting older. It was the first time in my life during COVID that I had started to notice they were slowing down, that their health was deteriorating a bit, and that they had chinks in the armor. They weren't mortal. And he asked how old they were. And I said, about mid-60s. And he asked how often I saw them. And I said, at this point, about once a year. And he just looked at me and said, okay, so you're going to see your parents 15 more times before they die. And I just remember feeling like I had been punched in the gut. I actually had to take a deep breath to avoid an angry response and remind myself that this was actually a close friend, someone who knew my parents well. It wasn't him being rude or aggressive. It was just math, simple math that we all need to confront in some way, because it is a recognition that time is the most precious asset. And it is the only thing that you cannot get back. And time measured in the amount of moments that you actually have left with these people, that it's so finite, so countable that you can actually place it onto a few hands in that sense. That was really the math that shook me in that moment and reminded me that if I didn't make a change, I was going to end up somewhere I didn't want to be. And the next day, my wife and I had a candid conversation about our life, our journey, our trajectory. At the time, we were in the midst of a 2+ plus year battle with infertility, struggling to conceive. I had been on this journey so narrowly focused on money, chasing these external affirmations, these external definitions of success, what I thought mattered. And a lot of other areas of my life had started suffering. I was drinking 6, 7 nights a week. My relationships with these people were struggling. My mental health, physical health, I was in a tough spot. While on the outside looking in, things were great. I was winning the game, if you will. And in that moment, we realized that we needed to make a change and prioritize the things that we truly cared about, not what the world had told us we should care about. And within 45 days, I had left my job. We had sold our house in California and we had moved back to the East Coast to live closer to our parents. And the most beautiful part in all of this was within 2 weeks of getting into our new place on the East Coast, we found out that my wife was pregnant with our son after, what was a really tough journey. And it was just one of those moments in life where I'm not a particularly religious person, but it was one of those moments in life where you feel like God winked at you, where when things fall into place, things come into alignment, everything sort of falls into place as it should.
Yeah. So walk us sort of quickly through your backstory. So you grew up on the East Coast.
I grew up on the East Coast in the Boston area. I come from a mixed race background. My mom is born and raised in India. My dad is white Jewish from the Bronx, New York. My parents have a very unlikely story of meeting. They crossed over by 2 weeks in university. When they wanted to get married, my dad's family did not accept it. His father told him he had to choose between my mom and his family. And my dad walked out the door and never saw his family again. To this day, I never met my dad's parents. He has 3 siblings I've never met. I have first cousins out there in the world that I've never met. All sort of grounded in this decision that he made and that they made to reject the kind of common convention that was handed to them, the path that was handed to them, and to carve their own, to choose their own. And that really was like a very formative thing when I think about the ripple effect through our family. I mean, I felt like I was raised by the most supportive, loving parents that you can imagine having. And a big reason for that is what I believe, that as parents, we either reject or amplify the things that we experience from our parents. And in the case of my father and of my parents, I think they rejected that, that experience that they had and really wanted to show up and be the supportive, loving, caring parents that they felt my father's father was not. Yeah.
So then you end up going to Stanford, where you study and you give up some grand slams. And after Stanford, sort of where did that lead to? What was your sort of career trajectory leading up to that conversation you had with your friend at that time?
I took a job working in finance in the investment world. And the big reason I took that job was because baseball had been taken away from me. I got hurt. I had thought I was going to go become this famous, successful, rich baseball player. That didn't work out. And I basically was convinced by that point in my life that the path to me living a good life was to go make a bunch of money. And, that would make me feel good. I would feel successful. I would no longer be insecure. I wouldn't be immature. I would have achieved the thing that society values, and the external affirmations would make me feel good. So I took a job that did that. It's like a high status, good sounding job. You're going to make 6 figures, all of these things. And I kind of put my head down for 5, 6, 7 years, with the deeply ingrained surety that I would wake up on the other side of this hard work and just be existing in this like idyllic land of success. It's like the idea of you prop up some achievement as the place where you're going to reach the mountaintop, and you're going to get there and you're going to be like, okay, I've arrived. Everything's great. And everything that I propped up as being that arrival, I would get there, I'd get that thing, and that new feeling would just be somewhere off in the distance. I would get the promotion or the bonus or whatever the thing was, and feel that momentary appreciation, and then immediately reset to, okay, what's next? What's the next thing that I have to do? I don't feel any different. And all along the way, these other areas of my life had started to slowly suffer.
Yeah. So the conversation you have with your friend feels like it was very time-centric. And the book is the 5 Types of Wealth, which I suggest everyone check out. So how did the conversation with a friend that was fundamentally about time lead to the ideas of these 5 different types of wealth? And could you sort of walk us through each type?
The conversation fundamentally sparked me to the realization that the way that we are measuring our lives, the way that we are thinking about what a successful, wealthy life looks like, is fundamentally broken, or at least incomplete. The scoreboard, if you will, is incomplete or broken. And that scoreboard in traditional society is money. It's the thing that we can measure, that we use to measure our lives, to measure our worth, to stack ourselves up against other people. And unfortunately, what I realized in that one moment, with that one conversation, was that it is not particularly conducive to a life well lived. It is a contributor, but it is not the sole way of achieving that. I had a bunch of money, but I was missing this one thing that was fundamentally holding me back. I was missing the time with the people that I care about most. And so that sparked me to go on a journey to try to understand, if this scoreboard is broken or incomplete, what is the better scoreboard? What is the right way that we should measure our lives, so that when we measure those right things, you take the right actions to go and try to win on that scoreboard. And that creates the right outcomes of living that life that you are truly fulfilled by. And that journey, which started in 2021, has been the journey of the last several years as I've written this book. I've spent time with thousands of people, talking to people old and young, rich, poor, all over the map, about what are the things that you want out of life? Well, like in the human experience, what do you envision for yourself in the future? What does a good life mean to you? And 4 things kept coming up over and over and over again. And it was time, people, purpose, and health. Very few people mentioned money. Money was kind of an enabler to some of those. It was a tool, but it wasn't really a goal in and of itself. And that is an important point, because when you think about the current scoreboard of money, it is the sole measure, and what you measure matters, because the thing that you can measure ends up being the thing that you narrowly hone in on and focus, optimize around. And yet, it's not really the thing that people are truly trying to build and go after. And so what happens is you have this Pyrrhic victory, if you will. You have this situation where people might win that one battle of money, but they're then losing the war by getting so narrowly focused. And the war is about those other things. It's about time, people, purpose, health, and a little bit of money. And so I just started thinking about, is there a better way for us to have a complete picture of our lives, a way to measure all of these things so that we can take the right actions on the journey and actually create the outcomes that we're all seeking?
Yeah. And you do, what I thought was interesting too, is that even though the book really frames money and the search for it, and I think in a really sane, sober way, you also have a chapter on financial health and wealth. How did your experiences speaking to other people and thinking about the 4 other pillars frame how you went into the money conversation?
I think this is a really important point, which is, you have already undoubtedly seen content or had experiences where some person that has made a bunch of money tells you that money doesn't buy you happiness. And every single time you hear that, you rightly roll your eyes at it, right? Like you said, like, okay, great. Like some rich person telling me money doesn't matter. Great. Yeah, sure. Easy for you to say. I don't have any money, so it does matter. And I wanted to make sure that it was clear that I am not saying that money doesn't matter. I am not saying that money is nothing. I am simply saying that money can't be the only thing. Money definitively does buy you happiness in the early years of your life and on the early part of that journey. The science on that is actually quite clear. Money does buy happiness because it reduces fundamental burdens and stresses. It allows you to create these experiences with people you love, shelter, food, all of these things that exist in the early years. But the blind pursuit of money at the expense of all of these other areas is not conducive to the life that you are trying to live. And so financial wealth is part of this new scoreboard, and it is a fundamental and very important part, but it can't be the only part. And that is really the balance I was trying to strike. And so the way that I frame financial wealth, and the way that I think everyone should think about it, is to really identify what your enough life looks like. And what I mean by that, I think the best way to articulate this is a story about Kurt Vonnegut, famous American author, and his friend Joseph Heller, another famous American author, the author of Catch-22. And the two of them went to this famous billionaire's house on the Hamptons, and Vonnegut says to Heller, Joe, how does it feel that just yesterday, the owner of this home made more money than your most famous book, Catch 22, made in its entire lifetime? And Heller replies, yes, but I've got something that he'll never have. And Vonnegut says, what's that? And Heller says, the knowledge that I've got enough. That idea, the knowledge that you've got enough, that is the most empowering idea in the world. That is where you find your content, fulfilled life. That is where you have that feeling of having arrived on a daily basis. You don't need to attach it to some more that sits off in the distance. And so that is really what I want people to do, is to go through this exercise of understanding what that life actually looks like for you. Not what the number is, because we don't really know what the number means when we say a number in our head. And so it becomes this like mirage that just disappears. But the actual life, the actual lifestyle that you are trying to build towards.
Yeah. What does enough look like for you? And what is that process of trying to discover and uncover that been like? And then a follow-up question to that. I'm just tacking on questions here. When you spoke to people who felt like they had enough, what were some of the common themes you saw?
Yeah. Enough for me, frankly, is not super far off from the life that I live right now. I had a realization shortly after my son was born. I was out on a walk with him early one morning, and anyone that has a young kid knows sleeping is a challenge. He would only sleep in those first few weeks if I was pushing him around in a stroller. So early one Saturday morning, I'm out for a walk with him, and I'm on the sidewalk, and this old man walked up to me, and he said, I remember standing here with my newborn daughter. She's 45 years old now. It goes by fast. Cherish it. And I took my son back to the house, and I brought him into bed, and my wife was still asleep, and the sun was kind of coming through the windows, and he had this little smile on his face. And I just had the feeling that for the first time in my life, I really felt like I had arrived, but there was nothing more that I wanted. That moment was enough. And ever since then, I have kind of harkened back to that moment. Whenever I start finding myself like all over the place, stressing about whatever future, whatever more that I'm being told I should want, comparing myself to other people on social media, all the things other people are doing, I look around and realize that I'm already living the life that I prayed for. I mean, sometimes the things that you pray for become the things that you complain about if you let them. And I was living in that. And so I have really tried to recognize that on a daily basis, pull myself back into the present moment. And that's not about giving up your ambition. I still chase things, but I chase them grounded in my purpose, not in the pursuit of more money. I chase things because I'm trying to create more experiences with people I love, because I'm trying to create more impact, not because I'm trying to make more money. So my enough life is pretty damn close to what I'm living now. And it is not Spartan. I get to, travel well, and we stay in nice hotels. I have a nice house that I live in. I would love to have a second house in my true enough life, but only because I want to be able to bring people that I love together for experiences. Not because I want some mansion on some long road or, gated community. I actually don't want any of that. I love the fact that we live in a neighborhood. My son plays out in the yard with his friends. That is my definition of my enough life. And there's so much power in that. And to your last question on what other people talk about, it's so interesting because there are common themes that you just hear over and over again when you ask people what life they're trying to create. And it is almost always surrounded by people they care about, freedom to do the things that they please, feeling a level of purpose in their daily life, something that they kind of know that they're connected to, and feeling healthy, feeling well. No one really talks about I want to fly around on private jets. No one really talks about some insane mansions or yachts, and they certainly don't talk about doing those things by themselves. And the funny thing that happens is you kind of hear those versions of the enough life for them. And then you ask, okay, well, what are you doing today? What are your actions in the present? And most of them are just chasing money. And it's this funny cognitive dissonance of, if that's the future you're trying to create, your actions in the present need to actually reflect the pursuit of that future. And those actions in the present, they involve money in some ways, but they also involve investing in your relationships. They also involve investing in your health. They also involve thinking about those bigger picture questions, purpose, the growth that you're experiencing. but you're not creating structure. You're not actually investing in those things. So how can you expect to create that future that you want?
Yeah. So you have people, there's a lot of great exercises, I think, for people to sort of figure out where they stand in these 5 different types of wealth in the book. As you've had people read the book and as you've had conversations with people, what areas did you find people were most lacking in? Was there a key area that kept just coming up over and over and over, and people said, well, yeah, I'm really chasing money, and like, this is the area that I've totally neglected?
Time wealth is the biggest one by far, that people struggle with, both on the surface and they know they struggle with it. You can see it and they know it. Social wealth is the one where they don't realize it, but you can see it. So, I'll talk about both of those separately. Time wealth, the struggle that everyone has is this, it's called the Red Queen effect. It's like, it's from Through the Looking Glass, the sequel to Alice in Wonderland. And Alice is running with the Red Queen, and they're running faster and faster and faster. And Alice notices that they're not actually going anywhere. They're not passing anything. And that Red Queen effect is the idea that if you actually want to make progress, you have to run faster and faster in order to do that, faster than your surroundings are moving. And that is sort of the treadmill that we all find ourselves on. We're doing more and more and more and more. We're busier than ever, but we're not actually making progress. We're not actually getting anywhere. We're kind of a rocking horse, always moving, but never making progress. A lot of that fundamentally, when you deconstruct it, comes from saying yes to too many things that aren't actually moving the needle. Most people have no idea what the 2 to 3 things are in their personal and in their professional life that will actually contribute to the step function changes that they're after in their life. So what they do is they say yes to everything because busy equals good in our modern society. And when you do that, you have no space in your life to actually deploy energy and attention into those few things that really matter. So you have okay outcomes on absolutely everything, and you never get to where you're trying to go. You are a time taker rather than a time maker. You're constantly in this kind of fixed one-to-one loop of inputs to outputs. So in the book, I kind of walk through a handful of exercises that people can go through for identifying those things that truly matter, saying no to the things that don't, and then deploying your attention and energy, which is really your precious finite resource, into the few things that do matter so that you can create those structurally game-changing outcomes in your life.
Yeah. And then socially, what do you find people needed to work on? Do those exercises then in turn lead people into more social activities and things that really enhance that social life, or what happens there?
So the funny thing about social wealth, I have this quiz in the book that you kind of walk through to establish a wealth score, like a new scoreboard for you to use. And social wealth is a funny one because everyone rates themselves quite highly on it. But then when you ask their loved ones to take the quiz on their behalf, to answer those same questions for that person. So you take it and then you have your partner take it for you. The scores are very different in that area. You think you're investing in your relationships, that you have great relationships, but the people you have those relationships with would actually rate you lower than you rate yourself. And that is a really important thing, right? That is actually like a really structurally important thing, because what it means is that we are not investing in our relationships as much as we think we are. We're actually allowing those to atrophy. The mindset shift that we all need to have there is to recognize that investments in relationships are as good, if not better, than any financial investment you can make. Your investments in your relationships are actually, generally speaking, what unlock the best financial opportunities in life. When I think about my own journey, the things that I've made money on, the things that have resulted in the most fun, the most interesting, purpose-driving activities, it has almost always been because of a person that I built a genuine connection and relationship with. It has almost always been because there was someone that I just was like attracted to and invested in our relationship and friendship, and that led to some cool opportunity in the future. Not to mention, just from a happiness perspective and from an aging perspective, relationship satisfaction is the single greatest predictor of a life well lived. Scientifically, we know this. But we don't invest in our relationships in the same way we invest in financial assets. We think that if we don't have time to do the grand show of affection, we shouldn't do anything. When in reality, sending the one text to the friend to let them know you were thinking about them, making the one phone call to your mom to just chat for 5 minutes in the car, doing that coffee date on a monthly basis, getting your gang of friends together for the once annual trip, tiny investments that pay off enormously in the long run.
Yeah. And one anecdote that I really loved from the book that I think sort of almost encapsulates both of these is from, I forget his name, the guy who founded Netflix.
And yeah, Mark Randolph.
It's like this non-negotiable. Could you tell us a little bit about that? And then also how you applied that to your own life and where you've seen other people apply it.
So Mark Randolph is the founder and first CEO of Netflix. And Mark posted this thing a couple of years ago now where he talked about this rule that he had throughout his entire technology career. Started all these successful companies, but he always had this one non-negotiable rule that on Tuesdays at 5 p.m., he would take his wife out for a date. And what he says is that, like, no matter what, if it was a Tuesday and we had a massive crisis at Netflix or at whatever company I was working on, I was walking out the door. If there was a big problem going on, you knew that you had to meet me on the walk to the parking lot because this was a non-negotiable in my life. And what I realized after speaking to him about it was it really didn't have anything to do with the date or the dinner or the 5 p.m. or the Tuesday or any of those things. It had everything to do with the identity that it cemented within him, with the identity that it defined and the ripple effects of that identity into everyone around him. It signaled to his wife, to his children, to his colleagues, to his employees, to everyone in his ecosystem that these were the priorities that he had created in his life. And it empowered all of those people to create their own set of priorities and boundaries around their lives. That concept is what I frame up as a life razor. A razor is like a rule of thumb for simplifying decisions. And my view is that that idea, I will never miss a 5 p.m. dinner with my wife, is like a life razor. It is a single rule of thumb that allows you to think about whatever opportunities or chaos come into your life. So to be able to say, when a new opportunity comes that may offer a whole ton of financial upside, but it'll cause you to travel 300 nights out of the year, to be able to say, what would the type of person who never misses a 5 p.m. dinner with their wife do in this situation? Would he take the opportunity, or would he have to adjust it or say no to it in order to continue to show up as that ideal version of myself in the world? And the answer becomes pretty clear. It cuts through the noise and it tells you, I can't take on this opportunity because it's going to jeopardize my ideal self from showing up in that way in the world. My version of that is I will coach my son's sports teams. He doesn't play sports. He's 2.5 years old. But what it means to me is that I am the type of father, husband, community member, and individual who my son wants to have around. It means that I'm the type of person who prioritizes family, love, and relationships above all else. I'm not willing to jeopardize my character, my integrity for financial opportunities. I'm not willing to take things on, even if they're going to be super lucrative, if it means pulling me away from the things that I truly care about most. That is my ideal self and how I show up in the world. And so I walk through an exercise in the book for helping everyone try to identify their version of this. And I talk about some other ones of people and exploring in different contexts and different phases of life. But I think that that idea is a enormously empowering one for people's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I found that super powerful personally. One thing I wanted to ask you about too is that you have a big online presence. You're on Twitter, you're fielding replies, all these sorts of things. And I wondered how your online presence, how does that color how you thought about social wealth? Like, do you think that being online and having social wealth can coexist? And how have you used social media in a way that sort of enhances your social wealth rather than pulls away from it, which I think can happen to a lot of people?
I think that social media is a pretty dangerous drug. And it is, generally speaking, designed to make you wish you were someone else, wish you were somewhere else with someone else, all of these things. And it is creating a pretty difficult ripple effect in society. I mean, Jonathan Haidt wrote this great book, The Anxious Generation. There's some terrifying stats now coming out on the impact of social media on our youth. I worry about it with my son, with my children. Teenagers are spending 70% less time in person with their friends than they were 2 decades ago. Because you're sitting here on your phone. Why do I have to get together if I can Snapchat my friends or do all of these things? Totally. When I think about social media, I kind of think about there being two sides to it. There is the entertainment sort of clickbait algorithm stuff, and then there's education and real value. What I want to do personally is I want to share things that are empowering and creating value for people in their lives. It might have an angle that makes it entertaining so that people consume the education. But in reality, I don't want to play in the sphere of like time suck, attention draining things. I want to play in the sphere of trying to empower people. I want to even the opportunity playing field with information and education. And then I want people to log off and I want them to go actually do these things, actually go live, in this world. I have increasingly leaned towards just having my newsletter, which is deeper writing, be the primary place that I create content. We then share that in different forms across all of social media in order to reach people at the top of the funnel and meet people where they are. But I try not to do my thinking on social media because I worried of the impact that it will have on my quality and depth of my thought.
Right. You start thinking in terms of truncating ideas into the 280 characters or whatever it might be. But a lot of times ideas need more than 280 characters.
Yeah, and I think that it's like the Mark Twain thing is the other angle on this. I didn't have time to write I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long letter instead. And so I do think that if you are starting from the longer piece and then trying to condense it, it does clarify your thought going that way. But the other way is very is the challenge. The other way is like you write the tweet and you're like, ooh, I wrote the little viral tweet, but there's actually no depth of thought that sits behind it. And I don't want to become that. Like, I don't want to become the short form, video clickbait tweet thing. And I actually have no depth that sits behind it. It's why I loved the process of writing this book, is because I actually got to explore these things. The book is long. Like, I didn't write a 180 page business framework, but it is a dense book. I spent the last 3 years working on it. And I loved the ability to actually explore things in more depth for that reason.
Yeah, and you did a great job. I mean, I especially appreciated being someone with a background in journalism where, fundamentally we go out in the world and we report, we speak to people. I think that there's been a tendency today for when people who are outside of that world to write a book, it's mostly done behind a screen. It's kind of like analyzing a few anecdotes. Here's this and that. Here's a study. But you actually went out in the world and spoke to so many different people with all different backgrounds. Was there any moments along that process where people said certain things to you that just really like, bam, it landed the plane and crystallized some of the ideas you were grappling with?
So many moments. I mean, one of the most amazing things about writing the newsletter and about social media in general is that you're sort of casting these magnets out into the world where you are sharing your values, you're sharing vulnerably, especially in the case of my newsletter, I'm sharing vulnerably. And that attracts people who have those values or who have felt those things, who are impacted by them, to come back to you and to share things. And one of the most amazing examples of that is a woman who I write about at the start of the Time Wealth section named Alexis Lockhart. And that story that she shared with me came 1 week before the final draft of this book was due. I was about to turn in the book. Literally about to turn in the book. And I got an email from this woman that had shared this very brief glimpse at her story. And I emailed my editor within a minute and said, I'm not turning in the book next week. I have to, it was like Goodwill Hunting. I got to go see about a girl. I was like, I have to go talk to this woman. And her story enriched the book in ways that I couldn't imagine. And she's actually flying out to come to the launch event that we're doing in New York City from Houston, where she lives. Her story and the words that she shared of that idea of being out in front of a crowd, and the one thing that she would say to the crowd if she had one line was, "It's later than you think." I was like, you just punch me in the face. Like, I can't even imagine a better bow on this idea that I'm trying to get across on just how magical these windows of time are with the people that we love than the story that she shared and the tragedy that she faced that brought it into the light for her. And the whole reason I share these stories is because I believe that these tragedies, these moments, these points of darkness that we experience, they shine a light back onto the path of where all of us stand. You read Regrets from the Dying, and you hear these regrets, and it shines a light back onto where you are. And what I say in the book, and what I'll say now, is when someone shines that light for you, it is very easy to read it, feel impacted by it, nod your head, and then go back living the same damn way you were before. All I want from people is to read that, feel it, immerse yourself in it, and then go do one tiny thing to live differently. I don't care what it is. Text your parent, give them a call the friend that you haven't spoken to in a while. Sit and think about your purpose a little more. Go out for a walk. Whatever the tiny thing is to live a little bit differently than you were. Because that is the momentum. That is the spark that actually could change your life.
Yeah. What did you hear about from people in regards to physical wealth when you were out reporting the book? What were the themes that continued to pop up?
A massive intimidation with what it means to be a healthy person. And again, social media has done this to us. And you have faced this, right? Like, this is right up your alley. And you are being fed a constant drip of content and ideas that are really intimidating when it comes to what it means to live a healthy life. You're being sold, this is the only way to eat in order to be healthy. This is the only way to work out. Otherwise, you're going to be fat and unhealthy. Here's the only way. You have to do cold plunge, red light therapy, sauna, sleep like this, fully dark room, sunlight in your eye. You have to do all these a million things in order to be healthy. And that, for someone that is at level 1 or trying to get to level 1, is actually an inhibitor to starting. And that is a sad thing, because there's a lot of people out there who view that as like, okay, that's what it means to be healthy. I'm never going to be that, so I'm going to do nothing. You stare at the big wall and you're like, well, I'm not going to climb that whole wall, so I might as well just stay where I am. And it's a lie. That's not what it means to be healthy. And you can get 80+% of the benefit by doing the boring basics. Super simple and very cost effective, almost free. And so what I try to get across in the book, and what you've seen, obviously, and what I think you do a great job of, and why I admire so much of what you've shared, is you can start at level 1. And you don't need to worry about level 100 when you're at level 1. I might be, at level 100, but we're not running the same race. And like, you get to run your own race in all of these areas of life. And in physical health, doing the boring basics on a daily basis, a couple of very simple things that don't take a whole lot of time and definitely don't take a lot of money, will compound positively in your life to create a future that is much better than the one you're heading towards. And that's what I wanted to get across. And that's what I saw in people across the spectrum, no matter where they were.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right that people think it takes a lot, when the reality is if most people would just hit the federal exercise guidelines, which are like 150 minutes a week of really moderate activity. I mean, we're talking like gardening, we're talking like a quick brisk walk around your house. That moves the dial so far. Like, doing something when you're doing nothing is just such a massive return. And that often gets forgotten. I think because you're right, of the sort of ecosystem we live in, of all the extremes that people go down. How do you fit? So you're busy, but you've managed to stay pretty fit. You just ran a marathon, had a great time. How do you manage to fit your training in?
I am a huge believer in just structure. I've always believed in that quote of like, don't tell me your priorities, show me your calendar. I think that we fundamentally just follow the things that we create time and structure around. And so whenever I'm in a real training mode where that's a key focus, I just have a block of time on my calendar where that's where my training is going to go. And I try to be efficient about it. If I'm trying to run the marathon, obviously that window has to be probably 2 hours during the week, because it's going to be a longer run. Plus I'm trying to lift, might be 3 hours on a weekend, but I do it in a way that fits my life. So like, the example that I'll tell you is this past summer when I wanted to train for the marathon, my wife was like this big groan when I told her, because she knows the time commitment to do the level of training that I want to do to hit the time that I want to hit. She knew the commitment. And what I told her was, it will never get in the way of our family time on the weekends. And she kind of like rolled her eyes at me. And I lived by that. I literally would go out for my Saturday morning long run at 4:30 in the morning. I would start the run. So that meant I was waking up on a Saturday morning at 3:45. I was eating a full meal and then going out on a, whatever, it could be a 3 hour run. And I was back before my son would wake up at 7:30. And, that just requires you to structure the thing. And so what I say to people a lot is, it's not time or energy that you're lacking. It's desire. We make time and we create energy for the things that we truly care about. If you have a 6 a.m. flight to go on a vacation that you're excited about, you will get your ass out of bed at 3 a.m. to go and make that flight. But then when it comes to changing your life and going and doing the thing that you claim you want, you say that you don't have time or that you're tired for it. It's not time. It's just desire. And so if you decide that you truly want something, you will find a way to make it happen. I guarantee it.
Yeah. How did your time playing baseball at Stanford, how has that informed your thinking about physical fitness, and what did you learn from that?
I learned that you can achieve much more by being consistently reliable than by being occasionally extraordinary. I went to Stanford and thought I was a hot commodity showing up there. I mean, I had been the best player on all my teams my entire life, right? I got a scholarship to go play. I showed up and I was the worst person on the entire team. I mean, every single guy was better than me, way more talented. Yeah, I was like a pudgy half Indian kid, right? Like I'm not a freak athlete. And I showed up and I'm 6'1", 6'2", like all these guys are 6'5", throwing 5 miles an hour harder than me. Like it was night and day. And I just remember thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to do well, I just need to keep showing up over and over and over again. And in the version of baseball and as a pitcher, what that means is that you just have to show up and do what you say you're going to do. You just have to be hard to kill in some sense. And in an actual pure pitcher context, what that means is just throwing strikes over and over again. Like, it's very hard to just get 10 hits in a row off someone because there's a bunch of fielders out there. Like, probability at some point they're going to hit it to someone. It's just very difficult. If I walk guys, if I hit guys, if I do those things, unforced errors, I'm going to be in trouble because I'm not extraordinary enough to get out of those things. But if I make them do it, I'm going to be tough to beat. And so I built my entire career at Stanford, where I had a great career out of just showing up and doing the work on a daily basis. Like workouts, runs. I was never coming in first in any of the workouts. I was never the fastest. I never threw the hardest. But I had a way better career than most of the people that were on the team. And that was purely because I just showed up. And you just knew what you could get out of me on a daily basis. It was never spectacular. It was never awful. I was just kind of like steady in the middle of the road. And that's very much the like Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger style of investing. They're like, we haven't been smarter than anyone else. We've just been consistently not stupid for a long period of time.
I love that. So good. So what are you doing now that you have this, you got a book tour coming up, a ton of travel and all that, and you travel a lot regardless. What are tactics that you use when you're on the road to sort of maintain your physical health?
I'm a big believer in having a few daily non-negotiables. And I think that applies to physical health as well as just your life. And they need to be a minimum viable level that is achievable in almost any context. So for me, my minimum viable, sort of non-negotiables would be 30 minutes of movement every single day. I need to do that. 200 grams of protein a day. I need to be able to hit that. I know that if I do that, I'll be satiated. I won't, snack on a bunch of things. I'll be prioritizing protein and then try to sleep. Protein?
Yeah. Like how do you work that in on the road?
I basically eat the exact same thing for breakfast every single morning. 6 eggs, cottage cheese, and fruit. Lunch, I normally have, 8 to 16 ounces of some sort of protein, ground turkey, chicken, steak, with, depending on what I'm doing from a carb perspective at that moment, either a carb source and a vegetable source. And then at dinner, I'll have veggies and about 16 ounces of meat. And then before bed, just because I'm not one of those people that can go to bed hungry, I'll do cottage cheese or Greek yogurt with a little bit of protein powder and some berries. And roughly that's probably 225 grams of protein. It could even be 250. Like if I'm training a lot and I'm really breaking my body down, I don't mind being at 250. I'm about 185, 190 body weight, depending on how much running I'm doing. But I have no problem hitting. Yeah, part of this is like I'm still a 215-pound fat kid at heart, and so I can still eat. I mean, like 16 ounces of meat. I'm unfazed. I could eat 32 ounces of meat at dinner and have no issue with it. And so like I don't have a problem hitting the 200 grams of protein. And then look, on sleep, my non-negotiable is that I try to get 7 hours a night. I would say that is the non-negotiable that I miss the most often. Partially because sometimes I just have to, like if I have an early morning flight and I had to be up at an event or something. But my goal with the sleep one is less about daily versus like over the course of a week. Let me try to make sure that I average seven a night. If I can do those three things from a health perspective, I can feel pretty good and not have any issues.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, landing the plane. What is one piece of advice that you would give anyone listening, sort of a big takeaway from the book?
Identify the things that truly matter to you, not what the world tells you should care about, not what your parents tell you, not what your friends tell you, not what social media tells you. Really think about what truly matters to you, and then go take action to build your life around those things.
Amazing. Where can people find you?
I am at Sahil Bloom on every major platform. The book is available everywhere books are sold. You can find more information on it at the5typesofwealth.com. And please reach out. Thank you. My wife was a big part in that. She's a designer, amazingly talented. And please reach out to me. It's me on all the platforms. So if you send me a message, it's me that's going to see it. I reply to emails. You can send me an email, sahil@sahilbloom.com. I love to hear from people and actually hear how these ideas are impacting you, how you're acting on them. So please reach out, and I look forward to meeting you in the future.
Amazing. Well, the book is awesome, and we really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us, man.
Thank you.